Once New Hampshire's first congressional district race is set, it's going to be among the most closely watched in the nation, and it will play a role in deciding who holds power on Capitol Hill. Right now, polls show two Republican candidates separating from the primary pack, vying to take on Congressman Chris Pappas. This morning, we'll start with the man in the lead, the 2020 nominee, Matt Mowers, who sat down with us at his home in Guilford. You're pretty much guaranteed victory in June. It's always good to be confident, but now with this hard-charging challenger from the right in Caroline Leavitt, did you think you might have spoken too soon?
No, I mean, look, I've always felt like our message is resonating throughout every single corner of the district, and folks are ready for a tested conservative to go down to Washington, D.C. Someone who's actually worked with President Trump to bring about American energy independence the way I did when I worked to approve the Keystone XL pipeline. Someone who's actually worked to break up the international narcotics trafficking that's coming into our country, like when we stood up to China, so we stopped the shipment of fentanyl through the mail, and then also stood up to secure the southern border and stop illegal migrants from bringing drugs, fentanyl, and even human trafficking across the southern border. Someone who's really been tested. But, you know, look, the polls don't matter to me. They really don't. I mean, look, I'm glad that we continue to lead in them because it doesn't change what we do every day. This has been a New Hampshire campaign. I'm going diner to diner, bar to bar, handshake to handshake, knocking on doors and talking to people one-on-one to get our message out there. And so it doesn't matter what the polls show. What matters every single day is our message and making sure we get out there and continue to work hard every day. And that's what we're going to do, not just through September 13th. But through November 8th, when we defeat Chris Pappas and finally give New Hampshire its voice back down in Washington, D.C.
You came close the last time against Congressman Pappas, but you lost. Does the case you make for change at all from 2020 to 2022?
Well, folks are living it every day. Right, 2 years ago, it was very theoretical. I said, if you spend too much money, you're going to have inflation. If you shut down American energy production, you're going to have $5 a gallon gas. If you continue to have open border policies, you're going to have an influx of illegal drugs. Now we're living it every single day. You look at the drug crisis. Fentanyl is the #1 killer of those 18 to 45. Not car accidents, not cancer, not COVID, not even suicide. Fentanyl. That's coming across the southern border. It's going up to sanctuary cities like Lawrence, Massachusetts, and talk to anyone in law enforcement, local, county, state, federal. They'll tell you that those drugs are the ones that are poisoning our neighbors here. You look at the energy policies that have come out of Washington, D.C. You know, there was a family just a town away from us. You know, we're up here in Guilford. It was a family in Laconia. They had to start a GoFundMe page because they couldn't afford their home heating oil for 2 weeks this past February. Those are the people who are hurting right now because of Chris Pappas and Joe Biden's policies. They're leaving New Hampshire residents literally in the cold. They're leaving our border exposed and the drugs to pour into our communities. They continue to spend and spend and spend. I mean, they just spent another $1 trillion this last month. And we're seeing the record inflation every single day. They didn't even address the baby formula shortage that my wife and I had to live through. Folks are living these problems every single day now. They know the consequences of the reckless decisions that Chris Pappas and Joe Biden have made, and now they're ready for a change. And that's where I'm coming in, because we need change down in Washington, D.C. to bring about this new conservative leadership that's going to be able to fight for New Hampshire every day, is actually going to address the real needs of everyday middle-class citizens who are hurting right now from this economy.
President Trump gave you his full and total endorsement in June of 2020. In fact, it was 2 years ago this very Sunday that you were on stage at the Trump rally at the Manchester-Boston Regional Airport speaking to a crowd of thousands. You don't have that endorsement this time around in this primary. Why is that?
Well, look, I'd welcome his support. And, you know, President Trump's been often giving out these endorsements a week or two before the election. So we'll see. And as you know, he's not bashful. When he's got his mind made up, he'll let everyone know.
Surely you've made your case to him directly, though. He could end this primary for you right now.
No, I mean, look, this is going to be about the people of New Hampshire. The voters of New Hampshire are the ones who end and choose our nominees. It doesn't matter about anyone from outside the state. But I'd welcome his support. And I'm confident that when he makes up his mind and when he wants to let everyone know what he's thinking on his mind, he'll let everyone know.
The FBI search former President Trump's home, Mar-a-Lago. Republicans have been very critical of President Biden, AG Merrick Garland, and the FBI. No surprise there. I haven't heard as many, if any, Republicans questioning why former President Trump might have had classified or top secret documents in his private residence. Would you defend the idea that an out-of-office president should have classified or top secret information. Was that the wrong thing to do?
No, look, every president has a collection of information they bring with them, and whether it's for their library or personal effects when they're beginning to write, memoirs and things like that. Also, the president has the right to declassify information along the way as well. What really concerns me, though, is the fact that, and I was very vocal about this the moment that the FBI raided his home, is the precedent this sets. That you now have a Department of Justice going after, in a very public way, a political rival, both former and possibly future. And this is the kind of stuff we see in other countries that have very weak systems, where a Justice Department is going after political adversaries. I mean, President Trump was clearly working with the FBI and Department of Justice. He met with them as recently as June, based upon all reports. There's other ways they could have gone about doing this without trying to send a political message, which is what I'm concerned they're trying to do. I mean, they should not be trying to shut down free speech or shut down political rivals by using an arm of the Justice Department to do it. That's for the American people to settle out.
I want to share a quote with you from your former boss at the State Department, Mike Pompeo, who said, quote, "No one should have classified information out of the appropriate place for classified info at any time, full stop, period." Do you agree?
Well, yeah, but I mean, we'll see what President Trump is able to say about, declassifying information, which he was able to do, and also the purpose for it. Let's not forget that it was the FBI that asked him to add additional security measures to the documents that he had, and he did that. Right, so clearly he was working with them. So I think there's a lot more transparency and accountability that has to happen out of this Department of Justice.
Abortion is becoming a defining issue in this campaign. If you are in a Republican majority in 2023 and some kind of abortion ban comes to the House floor, be it first or second trimester, are you a yes vote on that legislation?
Well, I think the Supreme Court has largely said that this is a state decision now. That's what they wrote about in their opinion, the fact that these are decisions that are best left to state policymakers. Look, I'm pro-life, and I'll look at every piece of legislation, of course, and see if it's in the best interest of New Hampshire. But I also want to make sure that it reaches constitutional muster. And right now, based upon what the courts are saying, it seems like this is going to be a state issue left for governors and state legislatures to determine.
As a pro-life individual, though, don't you owe a explanation to voters, essentially, of what you would do, that you would vote essentially to ban abortion in Congress if that comes to you?
No, I mean, like I said, this is largely a state issue now, based upon what the courts have said. And so, we'll review every piece of legislation the way I will any piece of legislation. Unlike the folks who are there right now who, get handed a bill and are told to vote on it without reading it, I'm going to read every piece of legislation, evaluate it on the merits, and decide what's in the best interest of New Hampshire every day. And also make sure that it's done in accordance to the constitutionality. And the courts have said this is largely a state issue now.
Your opponents keep hammering you on this, voting in two different state presidential primaries in 2016. You voted for your candidate, Chris Christie, here in February, and then in June in New Jersey, you voted for eventual President Trump. I'm curious, the Attorney General has said you didn't do anything wrong by the letter of the law here in New Hampshire. What about the spirit of the law? Is this the way the system is supposed to work, that a political operative can move around the country and vote in multiple presidential primaries?
No, look, I mean, what's really a shame is that there's folks in this primary using the same talking points from whether it's Nancy Pelosi and even Hillary Clinton, as you reported, that she chimed in on this. This is nothing more than a left-wing hit piece that came out 6 months ago. The AG looked into this, said it was two separate elections. When people move, they exercise their constitutional right to vote where they're living at that time in compliance with the law, and that's exactly what I did. Everyone else who's still talking about this is just about politics. I go throughout the district every single day. We're doing almost 8 stops a day. And everywhere I go, people are very concerned about the direction of our country, this lack of security we have on the southern border, the influx of the illegal drugs, the cost of gas prices and home heating oil that's about to come home and hit a bunch of folks really hard in the pocket this winter. Those are the issues folks are concerned about. I understand there's other people in this primary who want to play politics, but I'm focused on the issues.
If there had been a subsequent primary after New Jersey and the Trump campaign asked you to move and work there and vote in that primary, would you have done that?
No, I mean, that's not even an issue. I moved for work, and I think it was actually the last primary in the country, so it wouldn't have been an issue.
Had the opportunity been there, though, under your logic, you would have been able to continue moving and voting.
No, I mean, look, I moved to the New York area to work out Trump Tower, right? I mean, that's where I had to move for work. And so I did everything, of course, in compliance with the law, as the Attorney General said, and it was 2 separate elections. And, the folks in New Hampshire understand that. They get it. The only people bringing this up continue to do so for politics.
President Biden is taking billions of dollars in student loan debt off the books, essentially $10,000 per individual, making less than $125,000 per year. Congressman Pappas actually came out and kind of was a little bit against this, saying that he thinks this should be going through the legislative process and he wants it to be deficit neutral. What does that hedge tell you about how this policy will be received in CD1?
Well, it tells me that Chris Pappas is just trying to have it both ways. You know, clearly he supports Joe Biden's policy where he wants to take all of this debt from folks who, you know, a bunch of buddies of Chris Pappas went to Harvard with him, and then pass it on to a bunch of contractors and electricians and plumbers and other folks who are going out there and decide to go straight into the workforce. This is mind-boggling to me. The fact that you could have Chris Pappas and Joe Biden think that you should have working class folks who are working hard every day, paying their taxes, now go and pay for four-year degrees for a bunch of folks making six figures. I mean, you know, this is the type of insanity that's out there right now, and it's also getting rid of this culture of responsibility we should have in our society. We need to get back to a culture of work and a place where people understand that they have to be fiscally responsible. You know, that's the way we're going to approach these. And it sends the wrong message when Joe Biden and Chris Pappas, anytime they see a problem, what's their answer? Spending more tax dollars.
Adam Mowers, thanks for joining us on Close Up.
Adam, thanks so much.